Hi readers, Lee here. Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to my October reading recap. And I'm here today with a big glass of water. Let's be real, kids. These new teeth cost over $4,500. I'm not fucking them up with wine, but I will take a sip of this water. So I'm going to do something a little bit different on this month's reading recap. For one, I'm not going to read the backs of all of these. We'd be here all day. And I tried to do that in my weekend books about these. But instead of going in a linear fashion where the first book I read to the last book I read, I am mixing this up into the good, the fine, and the meh. The meh can be, none of these are really bad. They are just not good. And the fine are fine. That's it. Now, just a caveat, any one of these, October has been a weird reading month for me. I've really struggled. And any one of these, if read at a different time or under different circumstances, could fall into another category entirely. And I'll talk about that when I get to there. But I'm going to go good, fine, meh, good, fine, meh, until I run out of mehs, which will happen first, and then good fines, which will happen second, and then goods. So that actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that actually surprised me. There were more books that I found were good than I thought I had. So let's start off with a new auto-buy author for me. That is Ashley Herring Blake, Make the Season Bright. This was just a joy to read. I loved the love story. I loved, actually, the character that left the other one at the altar. I loved her the best because she just felt human to me. I wrote a note, ever find yourself rooting for the bad guy? Bright in this situation isn't bad. She just, she just couldn't handle what life was giving her at that moment. And I find that Bright, as opposed to her former fiance, opens herself up more because she's the bad guy. She sees her faults, she sees them clearly, and she admits to them. And I just really, really fell in love with Bright. I loved, I don't want any more in this series. I don't need it. But I just loved the love story, and I can't wait to read the next thing that Ashley Herring Blake has to put out. Next up, I think was the first book I read this month. I needed like a palate cleanser, and The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes was one. I have 3 other books in this series. I'm not in a hurry to get to them. It's fine. It's fine. It did what I needed it to. I didn't get invested emotionally one way or the other, but that's not what I was looking for. I was just looking to read a book. Read a book that didn't push me too much. The next example is from the meh column, and this one I might get some flack over if you're like classic literature. That's The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. I think that this is one, if I read it at a different time, it would fall into a different category. I actually probably would have put this in the fine category, but I think I struggled through it. And there were some good parts, but I did try to read the movie afterwards, and I just didn't care. Miss Jean Brodie, they try to get her kicked out because of, actually, she has sex, but out of the school. But they can't do that, so it ends up being fascism. And I just didn't care much about Miss Brodie. So this went in the meh column for me. Again, I might, if I reread this in 5-10 years, I might have an entirely different opinion of that. I've got to clean up these books. That's on the agenda for today. Next up, this book, I've got her other book on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know if I'll get to read that anytime soon or not. But I just adored this book. That is Allie Carter's The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. Kind of see a theme here. Make the Season Bright was light. This is also light. This was fun and fresh. there was a, this is what I wrote. So there was a mystery, there was a love interest. You know that the love interest is interested in her from the very get-go. You just have to see how it plays out and really deal with her self-esteem. And I wrote this note: ever get caught in a spiral of so-so books and think you've lost the love for reading? This book broke that spiral. And it really did. I really enjoyed The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year from beginning to end. There's nothing I didn't love about it. I loved Maggie. I loved the love interest, who was far more interesting than I thought. There was one little kind of out there part, but I had so much fun with this book that I could let it slide. It was out there about the Secret Service or the military or something like that, and I was like, who cares? You know? And you know I'm usually critical about that kind of stuff. Okay, next up is a fine book, which, again, had I read it in a different time, under different circumstances, I might have rated this completely differently. That is Ira Levin's Rosemary's Baby. I read this immediately after watching the movie. I should have reversed that, because, you know, a common complaint is that the book is always better than the movie. With the last two Ira Levins that I watched, Stepford Wives and Rosemary's Baby, they've been almost identical to a word, almost. I mean, very little discrepancies. And that was the problem. I had just watched Rosemary's Baby, and then I went to read the book, and I was bored with it. I was tired of it. It didn't offer me anything that I hadn't seen in the movie. I need to look at this and Stepford Wives for another project that I'm working on. I will talk very little about it. Well, I will have talked very little about it yesterday, because I'm going to post this one on Wednesday, and that one will post on Tuesday. But there is some treatment of women things in Ira Levin's writing that I would like to explore some more. So I've got this in the fine category. I think it is probably better than fine. It was just the way I went about reading it right after the movie. Big mistake, but I didn't know it, because most movies have some departure. It's my favorite glass. Why should I give it up just because I don't drink wine now? Okay. Meh. Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud. I've never read anything else of him. This was just fine. I have some pages marked, but I don't remember much about it. I have lines marked because they are, if not beautiful, then a little bit moving. But I don't remember much about this, and I don't care to read anymore in the, I think it's a trilogy. I don't care to read anymore. It's just fine. If they didn't leave me on a hook or anything, it's just fine. Meh. So, I kept saying it was fine. It's not in the fine pile. It was in the meh pile, and it's because it's just forgettable, and there's nothing to inspire me to read the next in the series. Okay. All right. The next one I read because nothing was working. I think I had DNF'd a book or two. Nothing was working for me, and I thought, what the fuck? I'll break my cycle, and I'll read something I normally wouldn't read in the week on a weekday. That is a memoir by Anna Garten, Be Ready When the Luck Happens. Now, if you watch my other videos, you know that, well, I was reading Hillary Clinton's Something Lost, Something Gained. I finished that last night, and there is a similarity in these two, I wanted to say. They both drop a lot of names, but who am I kidding? If I had the kind of friends that Hillary Clinton and Ina Garten did, I would be dropping names like, well, you know, Martha and I were talking the other day, or, well, you know, Snoop said. But anyway, so it didn't get on my nerves. It just kind of like raised my eyebrows, and then I just leaned into it and had a good time. I loved Ina Garten's memoir. I bought 2 of her cookbooks since I read this, but I've always loved her cooking. She has a recipe, I think I've talked about this before, for cream of wild mushroom soup that I've made several times. It is delicious, and I'm probably going to make it again soon now that it's coming up on winter. But she does have really good recipes. I really connected with the fact that her husband was prior service, didn't know that. They were stationed at Fort Bragg at the time, lived in Fayetteville. She got jobs here, and it was just really a great memoir. She was a hard worker. I wish I had the funds to have an apartment in Paris like she does. But also, one of the things that, privilege and money or wealth doesn't exempt you from pain and abuse or anything of the sort. So I really, really appreciated Ina Garten's. I'm not throwing this on the floor. I'm going to put this over here. I really appreciated Ina Garten's memoir. And I'm going to look at her cookbooks with a new eye now. Next up with Fine. This may come as a shock, but anyway. Night Road by Kristin Hannah. I love Kristin Hannah. She is like a new Nora Roberts for me. I know that when I'm having a time struggling reading, I can pick up a Kristin Hannah and it will get me through to the other side. I put this in the fine category because it's fine. It's not great. It's good. But when I compare it to like The Women or some of her other books, it's just fine. But fine is fine. That is what I needed. One thing I will say about this, and I said it when I did my weekend books, Kristin Hannah has done it again. Created a character I really dislike. I didn't like Jude much before this, but now, this was somewhere toward the end, and she pissed me off. Jude was so much of a helicopter parent in this that it made me uncomfortable, and I know that I have the tendencies to have been a helicopter parent, controlling and a little too hands-on. Jude was way too much hands-on. So, and then the ending was a little too abrupt and a little too happy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Kristin Hannah has happy endings, and that's fine, but this was just fine. Will I read it again one day? Maybe, when I've forgotten all about it, but it's not going to be one of my favorites of hers. In one of my videos, I was reading something by William Kent Kruger. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. That's how I'm calling it. And a commenter said she didn't like how he told the stories of the Native Americans. It wasn't his story to tell. Good comment. I agreed with that. So I decided to pick up some other stories by authors about Native Americans in that same era. Jesus. So I picked up Marcie Rendon's Murder on the Red River, and I can't even look at this book. I'm going to put it down. This is a meh, and it is a meh on the downside. The entire book, the main character spent smoking, looking for her cigarettes, thinking about buying a new pack of cigarettes, buying a new pack of cigarettes, smoking again, digging butts out of the ashtray and to smoke what little was left of them, and that was in every scene, every single scene with that main character. All she did was smoke. It permeated the book. Like, I could smell it. It permeated it so much. And I'm a smoker. So, this is not an anti-smoking campaign. This is, I don't remember what else happened in the book because all I know is she smoked a lot. Anyway, that really kind of upset me, and I will not read any more of her books in the near future. And if I pick up one of her books and the character smokes, I'm putting it down. Especially if they smoke that much. It was so off-putting. Like I said, I don't remember the rest of the plot because that was all it was. Wherever she was, that's what she was doing. You could have done it once for like a whole chapter and gotten that, okay, this is her pattern, and then left it. I didn't need to see it brought up to me every single scene. Anywho, rant over. So, the next book if my circumstances were different, this would probably be a fine or a meh. But my circumstances are not different. My mom passed away from glioblastoma multiforme, which is what Sophie Kinsella was diagnosed with 2 years ago. She wrote a novel about the experience. What does it feel like? And I didn't tab anything in here. I didn't need to. This is fictionalized so that she could take some liberties. She mentions that in either the foreword or the afterword. I almost said the backward. And I thought that this would be more gut-wrenching than it was, but it really was therapeutic. It helped me see things from the point of view of the person with the illness and how frustrating things must have been for her, how she must have seen things. I wish that I had read this before, but I didn't. It wasn't out before. The one part where I almost teared up a little bit was when they were explaining what was going on to their children, and the little girl, the youngest, says, "It's not fair." And like I said in my week in books, no, it's not fair. And it's really sad, a really sad diagnosis. I am glad that Sophie Kinsella has made it as long as she has. It does seem like she's had better health care. I don't know if it's because money, but she had pre-op care and post-op care a lot more than it seemed like my mom did. But different country, different rules, different insurance, different circumstances. Anywho, so I left this as a good book. I will not put that one on the floor either. Again, were circumstances different, I probably wouldn't have connected to it at all. But that's part of reading. You connect with things because you have a connection with them. Anywho. Next up was a filler book. It was fine. Worst in Show. Anna E. Collins. If you need a cute little rom-com that is very forgettable, go with this. I didn't really like the main love interest. I liked the dogs, and she was okay. It's just, Abby Jimenez calls this a fun twist on You've Got Mail with dogs. I feel like the You've Got Mail thing wasn't as strong. It was there, and then it was not there. They didn't play it up enough. So, meh, that's fine. This next book, I am putting in my meh pile for one reason. I did not rate this book on Goodreads. I am extremely anti-book banning. There were things about this book that I appreciated, but in That Librarian, Amanda Jones made it so much more about her making pronouncements and her calling out people that she didn't feel supported her through this ordeal that like she thought they should have, and less about some of the things that I felt would be more helpful in fighting book banning, like talking about the it's not content moderation, collection development process. There was a couple pages on that were excellent. I would have loved to hear more about that. But there was a part about Escambia County in Florida and some of the documented attacks on and intimidation of librarians. That was all valuable. But then she starts talking about Beauty and the Beast, and look, an author, Amanda Jones, is not. A librarian, fine, she is, I'm sure. I don't know her personally. I really wanted to like this a lot better than I did, but I wrote this down. It's the commentary that gets me. It's snarky, and snarky's fine if you're having a conversation, or even if you're doing a short or a video, that's fine. But in a book about book banning, there's so much snark and so much commentary, and I just got tired of it. So I'm very disappointed that this was not better, that it didn't give us more about collection development and things to do, fighting book banners. No, it was all about her personal petty grievances, and it was really just a disappointment. I I will support Amanda Jones in her efforts to fight book banning, 100%. I will not probably read if she writes another book. The writing style was not for me. But let me tell you whose writing style was for me. That was Johanna von Veen's My Darling Dreadful Thing. I loved this. This was a great book. I don't have the words to describe it. One of my colleagues has watched some of my videos on Facebook and Instagram and made a comment that when I really like a book, I seem to be at a loss for words. I'm trying to get better about that. But yeah, I really love this, and it's been several weeks since I read it, so I don't have the words right now to describe this. Yeah. Sorry, I got lost in it. Great book. It is gothic. It is just, yeah, a beautiful, beautiful book that leaves you with questions. And yeah, love it, love it. Ooh, that's not going down on the floor either, apparently. Next up, this could go either way, fine or meh. There were some things I really loved about this. In Still Life by Louise Penny, I loved her sense of humor. I liked the characters in Three Pines. What I didn't like was the fact that you spend a lot of time inside people's heads. And that, because of that, I had some trouble keeping track of who was who. And I don't, like, I'm not sure why I didn't DNF this, except that I'd get to a point and she'd throw something in and I'd be like, okay, I'll keep going. So I'm reading the second book in this series. There are 19. I will not get to 19. I'm reading the second book in this series and on my Kindle. So that's going to hurt my experience a little bit. I'm only reading in the mornings. Yesterday morning I forgot to. This morning I remembered and just read a chapter. And it's okay. In this first part of the second book, she describes the town and the townspeople like she should have done in this one. And I don't remember her doing it in this one, and I just finished it a couple days ago. But again, in book 2, she is in people's heads all the time. I'm going to finish it, and then I'll probably let Louise Penny, I might finish it, who knows. Then I'll probably let Louise Penny go. This could go between, the only reason this is not a meh book is because of the humor. I love the humor. She does make her characters, even though it's hard to get to know them, but because you're inside their head, they're fleshed out. They're good and bad and selfish and human. So I just don't know what I'm missing in Louise Penny. I'm going to try to some other detectives and see. Maybe I'll like one of them better. Okay. So that is it for the fine books. I've got 3 more books to talk about. 2 good and 1 meh. And the meh was We Burn Daylight by Bret Anthony Johnston. Now, at the end of this, he says this is not about Waco. Fine. It's not about Waco, but it's about Waco because it's set in that same setting, same area, same time of year, whatever. What I found about this was the pacing. I thought at first it started off, it's got podcast episodes and then chapters, and it started off and the pacing was really just fine. And then they get to They get to the part where the feds and the local officials raid the compound, and all of a sudden it gets slower and slower and slower. So when the pace is supposed to be picking up, it actually slows down. I ended up skimming through, and by skimming I mean skipping a whole bunch of pages and reading the very end because I just did not care. I am so disappointed in this book. Cover's fantastic. The premise is great. I knew what had happened. I felt like I knew what had happened. I still don't really know because I skipped that part, but I just don't fucking care. I just don't care. This was a disappointment to me, and that is all that I will say. I don't think that, I don't know, maybe. Maybe if I read it during a different month when I wasn't already struggling with pacing and everything, maybe it would have been different. Who knows? This book would have been fine, except I still think about one character, and spoilers ahead, if you plan on reading The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Laurie Gilmore, I'm going to talk about some things that could be spoilers. And first of all, Hazel is the main character in this. I don't remember her. I do remember Noah, and I loved him. Here's why. So, Hazel is this, let's just call her a stick in the mud. She does the same thing. She's never been out of her, out of her hometown, doesn't, take any risks, anything like that. And Noah's the bad boy who moved to town, and I don't know why I have these glasses on if I'm not going to read from the things. Who moved to town, and he doesn't have any long-term relationships, and they get into like a friends with benefits thing while they're doing the scavenger hunt. But you know that there's something else going on with Noah, and he's estranged from his family because he feels that he didn't do what they wanted him to do. And towards the end, something happens, and he's like, he had to get out of here. He needed a break. He'd almost learned to block out that voice that criticized him so harshly, the one that had kept him away from home and his family for so long. But sometimes it crept back in. He used to think it was his dad's voice, but lately it was sounding a lot like his own. So I finished this book, and it was fine, it was good, and then it would have been in the fine pile. But then I kept thinking about Noah and that line about he used to think it was his dad's voice, but it was sounding a lot more like his own. And I kept thinking about it. So this book is going into the good pile. It won't make the list of best books. It will make the list of books I'm going to read others by this author. For me, it's a little thing like that can take a book that it could be comparable to Worst in Show and just give it that little kick, because she made Noah human in a way that she really didn't make Hazel human. Not as relatably flawed. I'll leave it at that. Okay, final book of the month. Not the final one that I read. I forget which one I read last. Oh yeah, it was Still Life by Louise Penny. Jasmine oh my God. Jasmine Zumideh Needs a Win. I don't know what happened to my mouth right there. By Susan Azim Boyer. This was cute. I bought this in for a video that I did about elections, because when this posts, the election will be over. We may not have results yet, but it will be over, and we'll have done all that we can do, period. So I bought this to talk about politics and elections, and in this book, Jasmine Zumideh needs a win because she's told her favorite college, her preferred college, that she's already student body president. The election hasn't even happened yet. And one thing I loved about this book, it is a YA. I love YA, but this was just a good YA. One thing I loved about it was Jasmine makes so many mistakes, and you see them piling up, and you see the train wreck coming, and you want to shout at her and say, stop, but you can't, and she can't stop. She keeps on going until the train wreck happens. And I do like how at the end she takes accountability, and it was really a fun little read. That is my month in books. I don't even know how many books that was. 3, 4, I don't know. Doesn't matter. November is starting a little bit slowly for me. I did finish the Hillary Clinton book on audio. I'm going to take a break until after the election, which at this point is already passed, to determine my next audiobook. I am listening to some podcasts to kind of give my brain a break. When I back to back to back, I get burnt out. Today, which I'm recording this on Monday, so today I'm going to spend some time trying to figure out what my fiction book for November will be. And I hope to finish this evening my nonfiction, because I have another couple of books that I want to go into, and I might be the rest of this month, just 2 books a month, or two books a week, because I want to squeeze in some longer books now that it's getting closer to the end of the year, and I've got another kind of pet project I'm working on. Anywho, that is it for me. I hope you've had a great reading month. I hope I have a great reading month in November. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. As usual, I will put links to all these at bookshop.org down in the description box. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear from you. Happy reading!